Part 111. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1102. Chapter 1102. People go to higher places. God-given opportunity. When passing by Suchen, the girl glanced at the young man lying on the ground, not knowing whether he was alive or dead, and sighed secretly. You can't blame me, Liu Yuxia thought to herself, that a girl like her who is beautiful and has good cultivation qualifications is naturally worthy of being a dragon among men. In the past, Suchen was naturally a dragon among men, but unfortunately he has turned into a dead dog now. Water flows downwards, and people move upwards. Suchen, you can't blame others. 3 days later, Suchen woke up faintly while lying on the bed. Subconsciously running the spiritual power in his body, he suddenly felt a sharp pain like needle pricks in the meridians all over his body. He instantly understood that his cultivation as a high-level warrior at the 9th level of Suanwu was completely gone, and there was only a pitiful trace of spiritual power left in his body. This allowed him to wake up in 3 days. Think about it, he entered the Qingxia sect to practice at the age of 10, broke through the human barrier at the age of 12, and advanced to the 6th level of Kaiwu. Since then, his cultivation speed has not slowed down, but has become even faster. At the age of 13, he broke through the 9th level of Kaiwu and became a master of the Suanwu realm. After that, he practiced hard day and night for 4 years and finally reached the peak of the 9th level of Suanwu. He was only one step away from the true martial arts realm that monks dream of. It was at this time that he easily won the title of the strongest outer disciple by virtue of his strength far exceeding that of his peers, and his reputation was unparalleled. However, a month ago, on the night when he triumphantly won the championship of the Outer Disciple monthly competition, an evil light, like a red thread, suddenly shot into his dantian from the window, and quickly traveled through all the veins in his limbs, killing him. Destroyed and turned upside down. And the talent he had always been proud of, the middle grade water spirit root, was actually taken away. 1 day later, he was shocked to discover that his middle grade water spiritual root had turned into a mottled and messy pseudo-spiritual root. A spiritual root that is hardly a spiritual root. The worst spiritual roots in history. None of them. For nearly a month since then, the spiritual power in his body has continued to drain away, and no matter how he tried to remedy it, it was of no avail. As a result, he was easily defeated by Yang Su with one move 3 days ago, and he became like this now. Suchen endured the pain all over his body, and managed to use the remaining spiritual power in his body to move around his body. Circle after circle, until the needle-pricking feeling in the meridians weakened slightly, I managed to sit up. Boom. 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 The courtyard door outside was suddenly beaten hard and trembled violently. Even the dust on the top of the door fell down. The surname is Yet. Open the door. Open the door for me. Suchen frowned, thought for a moment, looked cold, and put on his clothes slowly. The people outside banged the door loudly. Seeing that the people inside didn't open the door for a long time, it was quiet for a moment. Maybe it was the person outside. Hearing the sound of washing inside, I was so angry that I couldn't help but kick the wooden door in front of me away. Suchen, if you don't drink the toast, you'll have to drink wine as a penalty. I asked you to open the door, but you dare to pretend to be stupid. Lu Hong, who had a mustache and a slightly chubby figure, broke into Suchen's courtyard angrily, but saw that the boy was still as if he hadn't heard anything, and was wiping his face carefully with the towel. Lu Hong's fat face immediately turned red. Blushing. This guy didn't take him seriously at all. Thinking about the purpose of coming here, Lu Hong sneered, with a cruel look in his eyes, and sneered in a low voice, you didn't take me seriously before, I know. But now you have become a dog, and you still dare to act like an uncle in front of me. I bother. Look, I can't kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Hong jumped up and punched Suchen on the back of the head. This hand was dark enough. If the blow was real, Suchen would definitely end up with a split skull. But Lu Hong was not afraid. Manager Lu of the Qingxia sect's outer sect is Lu Hong's distant uncle, and he occasionally takes care of him. In the past, he would not dare to touch Suchen, the number one disciple of the outer sect, but now, if he dies, he will die. Go back and follow him. If you tell the uncle in charge, you might even get a reward. It's not that I, Lu Hong, want to be a bad guy, it's all because of this bitch. I think at the beginning, he, Lu Hong, just liked to bully the poor people with inferior qualifications. I enjoyed talking about it. But since this kid came to Qingxia sect, Lu Hong has never had a good day. Although Suchen also comes from a poor family, his cultivation aptitude is one of the best. He was born with middle-grade water spirit roots. In addition, he was diligent enough and his strength far exceeded that of ordinary outer disciples. Moreover, Suchen happened to be an enthusiastic person. Lu Hong bullied the poor disciples and was discovered by Suchen many times, and then he beat him up. Although Manager Lu had some power, it is only binding on ordinary outer disciples. Disciples with excellent qualifications like Suchen cannot be touched by just an outer disciple. There was no other way. After being beaten several times, Lu Hong learned to behave. When he saw Suchen, he walked around, just thinking that he would get revenge on him if he had the chance in the future. Oh my God, this opportunity has finally come. 30 years in the east of Hedong and 30 years in Hexi, Suchen, who has always been proud of the heroes, has now turned into a waste. And Yang Su destroyed his cultivation with one move. This is really a God-given opportunity. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1103. Chapter 1103 Exploding Talisman. Incredible crime. Suchen, Suchen, you fell into the hands of me today. Instead of kneeling down to beg for mercy, you dare to pretend to be majestic in front of me. You are seeking death. Today, all the old and new hatreds between you and me are put to rest. Lu Hong was extremely excited, and the wind of his fist made a popping sound. Hearing the sound, his heart almost flew out of joy. It has been suppressed for 3 years. 3 whole years. Although I, Lu Hong, am low in cultivation, he is also a monk at the 4th level of Kaiwu. This punch will make you return to the west. Standing opposite him, Suchen could clearly see Lu Hong's ferocious face and his big mouth that grinned almost to the ears. He snorted coldly. When Lu Hong's fist hit him, Suchen suddenly turned around. The moment Suchen turned around, Lu Hong caught a glimpse of Suchen's familiar expression that was half smiling but not smiling. This expression was so familiar to him that it even immediately aroused him. Countless nightmares in the past 3 years made him turn around and want to run away like a reflex. But in the bottom of his heart, he thought, this girl has become a scum, why should I be afraid of him? The attack that suddenly weakened was slightly boosted. When Lu Hong rushed towards Suchen again, a red talisman appeared in front of him, and he patted his chest. Lu Hong was stunned, looking down at the red talisman attached to his chest, and he was about to cry, with a trembling voice. Following Suchen as he ran away, he shook his head and said, "This, is this, explosion talisman." Suchen stood 3 feet away, showed a friendly smile, and nodded very sincerely. Then, before Lu Hong could tear off the red talisman, Suchen squeezed it with one hand, mobilized the remaining spiritual power in his body, and directed Lu Hong pointed at the red talisman on his chest. With a bang, Lu Hong was blown away by the blast of air like a rag bag. He drew an arc and hung on the window edge with a bang, like a dead fish. He fainted before even releasing it. At the moment when the red talisman exploded, Suchen was slightly affected by the surrounding air waves, unable to support himself and fell to the ground. In order to activate the red talisman just now, the last trace of spiritual power in his body had been overdrawn. Intense, feeling weak, Suchen gently pressed his violently heaving chest and let out a wry smile. It was only for people like Lu Hong who had never practiced martial arts that Suchen could seize the opportunity and succeed with his eyesight that was once at the 9th level of Suan Wu. Counterattack the opponent. If it were any other disciple who worked a little harder, Suchen would have no chance to stick the red talisman on the opponent. After resting cross-legged for a moment, Suchen stood up, walked to Lu Hong, and searched. A notice appeared in his hand, and upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a criminal order. Suchen, a former outer disciple of our sect, has committed the serious crime of treason. From today on, his cultivation will be abolished and he will be demoted to a lowly slave. He will never be forgiven. Ah, Suchen sneered. I guess this is why Lu Hong, who has always been as timid as a mouse, dared to pee on his head today. It's a pity that he forgot that no matter how miserable I, Suchen, am, I am not a small role like him. Capable of humiliation. The crime order, ha. Interesting, it seems things are not simple. Suchen gently patted the crime order in his hand, squinted his eyes slightly, and looked at the sky. Yang Su ruined his cultivation. This was a grudge, but it was just a small grudge. That night of the night caused his spiritual roots to collapse. The murderer behind the scenes has a deep hatred against himself. This is the first time Lin Qing has encountered such a sinister creature that can steal people's spiritual roots silently. It must be that the murderer behind the scenes has a lot of background. Although Yang Su comes from a wealthy family, he is just a wealthy family among mortals, and the red thread is not something he can touch. Think about it again, for a month after his spiritual roots were broken, no one from the top of the sect paid attention, as if they had no idea. However, Suchen was very clearly, would the sect's senior leaders know something that hundreds of disciples outside know? You must know that Suchen is not an ordinary disciple in Qingxia section. Disciples like Suchen who have middle-grade water spirit roots, Qingxia sect does not how many, each one is treated as a treasure. This is also one of the reasons why Suchen's strength has improved by leaps and bounds in 7 years. It is precisely because of the support of the sect's spiritual stones and elixirs that the sect spared no effort that Suchen has made rapid progress. But since a month ago, the senior officials of the sect suddenly turned a blind eye to him. I'm afraid there is something fishy here. What's more, the criminal order in hand cannot be promulgated by the elders of the sect and above. If the elders are not obtained, without their tacit consent, this criminal order would never be issued so quickly. He was even impatient to go through the motions, and casually accused himself of treason, so he hurriedly issued a criminal order to himself. After analyzing this point, things have become very serious. Obviously, the red line must have been done by the senior officials of the sect. Even if it wasn't, it was closely related to the senior officials of the sect. Thinking of this, Suchen's scalp went numb and he was also very confused. What was the reason why someone would take it away? What good does this do to them about their own spiritual roots? Moreover, if the senior officials of the sect want to attack themselves, why do they issue a criminal order? The elders of the sect are all masters of the real martial arts realm. I am a useless person and want to be a god. It can be said to be very convenient to kill yourself without anyone noticing. After killing yourself, you can just report yourself missing. Why go to all this trouble? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1104. Chapter 1104, Cutting the Grass and Eradicating the Roots. 3 Turn Fake Death Pill. Suchen was puzzled, but the matter had come to an end, and the urgent question now was to consider his next step of survival. Now, I have not recovered from my serious injuries, my spiritual power has been completely dissipated, and I am no longer as good as an ordinary mortal. He couldn't even catch a chicken securely. It could be said that he had no ability to protect himself at all. If the other party comes to eradicate the situation at this time, I am afraid that I will have no chance of surviving. Suchen walked around in the courtyard, a thin layer of sweat broke out on his forehead. 17-year-old Suchen had a ring of hair around his mouth. What he encountered today was a life and death situation he had never encountered before. Fortunately, he has a strong natural ability to control himself. He took a few deep breaths to eliminate distracting thoughts and gradually calm down his mind. Taking small steps in the courtyard, I secretly thought about how to deal with it. The criminal order for the disciples of the sect was not issued by the steward. Instead, Lu Hong, an ordinary outer disciple who had a grudge against him, was notified. I wonder if there was any intention from the mysterious high-ranking officer. I hope I am overthinking, otherwise, the other party has already begun to eradicate the roots. The Qingxia sect can't stand anymore. Now it has to find a safe place to save its own life and then seek a chance for revenge. But now its strength is not even as good as that of a mortal. It is too difficult to protect oneself. Suchen thinking hard about countermeasures, suddenly there was a groaning sound from the window. It turned out that it was Lu Hong who woke up. Lin Qing picked up the wooden stick in his hand and hit it with a very smooth stroke. Lu Hong fainted again. There was a sudden movement in his heart. He searched Lu Hong carefully. 5 pieces of spiritual stones, not bad, 1 packet of qi gathering powder, this is just right for me, 20 silver coins, take it. Suchen searched Lu Hong's clothes. He was on his back, and his hand suddenly stopped on his belt. This is, elixir. Suchen took out a small medicine bottle from the inside of his belt. Seeing how deep he had hidden it, it must be worth a lot of money. When he opened it, Suchen was shocked. This, turns out to be the third turn fake death elixir. In Qingxia sect, outstanding disciples like Suchen, who are among the outer disciples, only take the first level elixir. Only by winning the championship in the monthly competition can they have the opportunity to obtain the second level elixir. The strange red dove egg-sized pill in his hand at this moment turned out to be a 3-turn pill that only elders are qualified to take. How could Lu Hong have such a thing on his body? It is simply unbelievable. He is what is a mere ordinary disciple of the 4th level of Kaiwa doing with the 3rd turn fake death pill? Could it be that God will not kill me? Suchen's expression changed several times. He played with the red pill, thoughtfully. After a long time, his eyes suddenly certain. Just do it. Suchen hid the items he found on Lu Hong, as well as the few spiritual stones he had left, in his shoes. Then he picked up a wooden stick and hit Lu Hong's head hard until he hit Lu Hong. His flesh and blood were blurred and he was sure he was dead before he stopped. Suchen looked around to make sure no one noticed, then he fiddled with the clothes on his body twice, and then resolutely took the fake death pill. After 3 breaths, Suchen slumped to the ground and was silent again. The layout of the place was very rough, but no matter how others guessed, they would never have thought that Suchen would get a 3rd turn elixir and be in a state of suspended animation. Moreover, the only person who knew the suspended animation elixir was Lu Hong was too dead to die, and Suchen didn't worry that anyone else would know about it. Facts have proved that the effect of the fake death pill is very effective. Half a day later, someone in the sect discovered the bodies of Lin Qing and Lu Hong, but unexpectedly no one noticed that Lin Qing was a living dead. Although Suchen had no wounds on his body, there were at least 10,000 ways to kill a trash whose cultivation level was inferior to that of a mortal. Let's talk about someone who was demoted to a lowly status by the section. It was the slaves thing, so no one cared about his death. But Lu Hong's death made manager Lu kick Suchen's body hard. Suchen had helped many poor disciples of Qingxia sect during his lifetime. Suchen dead, A few conscientious disciples came to collect Suchen's body and buried it in an uninhabited hillside outside Kingxia section. The fake death pill was effective for 3 days. On the second night, the moon was sparse, and in this uninhabited hillock, a tall and thin man in black came. The man in black looked around and easily found the small earth bag where Suchen was buried. The man in black had his right hand as a palm, the whole body's spiritual energy gathered in the palm, turned it violently, and slapped it on the ground. The body buried in the earth bag was suddenly shaken out with a bang. The man in black quickly retreated to avoid the flying soil. Cold and pale fingers touched Suchen's neck, and he snorted coldly. Just as the hall master expected, this kid took the fake death pill obediently. The man in black chuckled lowly, patted the cold face of the corpse, and said with a little emotion, the hall master really knows what's going on, and with a little trick, he made this smart guy take the fake death pill. Well, I'm sorry. After 2 days of being corroded by yin energy, I took it back and soaked it in divine water for 7 days and 7 nights, and it became another excellent human body nourishment. Not bad, not bad. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1105. Chapter 1105. 2-star high-level monster red snake. The man in black searched carefully inside the corpse's clothes. After a while, he found a few spirit stones, chi-gathering powders and silver coins in the corpse's boots. He secretly screamed that it was unlucky that he only found these few junk items. While complaining about how poor this short-lived boy was, he casually shook out a sturdy black cloth bag and easily put the living dead man in it. Hiss. At this moment, a gust of fishy wind suddenly hit, and the man in black's face changed drastically. A thin dark red shadow was seen, attacking fiercely towards the man in black at a speed as fast as lightning. The man in black was suddenly attacked, unable to dodge, only able to slightly turn to the side of vital parts of the body. Ah! A scream came from the mouth of the man in black. Unexpectedly, this dark red shadow was extremely flexible while traveling at high speed. In mid-air, it twisted its slender figure at an incredible angle. It bit the man in black's face hard like lightning. The man in black screamed and grabbed the dark red shadow in a frenzy, and pulled hard with both hands. The shadow suddenly whined and broke into 2 pieces. Only then did the man in black realize that, this dark red shadow is actually a scarlet snake. A 2-star high-level monster. With the cultivation level of the man in black, it is not too difficult to kill this kind of monster normally, although it takes a lot of effort. But who would have thought that in the nameless hills outside the Kingxia sect, there is actually a 2-star high-level monster hiding. And it sneaked up on him when he focused most of his attention on the corpse at his feet. The venom of the scarlet snake is extremely powerful. In just one breath, the spiritual energy was unable to suppress the poison. The man in black had a huge swollen face, black and purple, and he was grabbing at his arms randomly, trying to find the detoxification pill. Unfortunately, as his consciousness became increasingly blurred, he could not find the antidote until his death. He groaned unwillingly and fell to the ground. At the moment before his death, he discovered that a thicker red snake was leaping out. He came over and let out bursts of neighing next to his companion, who was broken into 2 parts. On a full moon night, it is when the scarlet snakes mate, and it is also when they are most aggressive. The moon sets and the sun rises, the sun rises and the moon sets. As time went by, the effect of the fake death pill gradually dissipated. On the unknown hill, a boy with stiff movements and an extremely pale face slowly climbed up. Suchen looked around in horror. The unknown dead body in black was cut off the 2-parted carcass of the red snake, and the disgusting pungent smell around him, the scenes in front of him made him unable to turn his head for a moment. He didn't know what happened to him during the 3 days he pretended to be dead. What happened? After being in a daze for a while, Suchen woke up and quickly checked his body. Fortunately, I was not injured at all. God bless me. Suddenly, he was startled again. Everything on my body is gone. Suchen subconsciously looked at the dead body in black next to him. Could it be? Suchen was shocked, but even in this situation, there was still a trace of clarity in his mind. He wrapped his hands with cloth and searched for all the things on the man in black. Sure enough, he found his own belongings. Not daring to dwell on what terrible thing happened to him, Suchen pulled off a piece of the man in black's clothes, hastily wrapped up all the items found on the man in black and carried them on his back. The entire head of the man in black could no longer see his original appearance. It was a piece of black and purple rotten flesh, leaking a pungent unknown liquid. If you smell it too much, you will feel dizzy. Suchen didn't dare to touch a man in black like this with his hands. After a quick tidying up, we were about to leave this place of right and wrong. After only taking 2 steps, he hurriedly returned, carefully filled the empty medicine bottle with a little bit of the fresh blood squeezed out of the scarlet snake's body, and then left. Facts have proved that Suchen's approach was right. Starting from this unknown hill, Suchen vaguely walked towards the nearest town with the sun as the direction. Along the way, we encountered various beasts at least 3 times, not to mention monsters that might be hiding in a dark place. However, whenever Suchen sensed danger, he would take out the medicine bottle containing a drop of blood from a red snake, open the mouth of the bottle, and the spreading fishy smell would scare away the ferocious beasts. After all, it is a 2-star high-level monster, and even a little bit of its smell can scare the crap out of ordinary beasts. After taking some detours, 5 days later, Suchen, dressed in rags and scarred, finally arrived at Shehi town, the nearest town outside Qingxia sect. The dirt and messy long hair made it impossible for even the people who knew him best to recognize that this beggar-like guy was the former #1 outer disciple of the Qingxia sect. In fact, Shehi town still belongs to the Qingxia sect's sphere of influence. From time to time, young people dressed as Qingxia sect disciples can be seen walking proudly on the streets. As one of the few sects in the Crescent Kingdom, the Qingxia sect has considerable influence thousands of miles around. In this land, anyone who says that he has any relationship with Qingxia sect will be looked down upon. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1106. Chapter 1106 Mid-Grade Spiritual Stone. Xiao Huan Denling Lu Flying Sword. However, these things have nothing to do with Suchen. Using weeds and rotten vegetable leaves as cover, beggar like Suchen walked in this lively town carrying a bag of garbage that only a beggar picked up. Occasionally, if an enthusiastic person throws in 1 or 2 copper coins, he can go to the stall to buy 2 warm steamed buns to fill his stomach. He didn't dare to use the silver he had on him. 11 days have passed since Yang Su defeated him with 1 move. He must rush to Nyota village within 2 days to find someone. Not retaliating is not a gentleman, and lack of strength is no excuse for forbearance. Suchen is going there to find someone, an inner disciple who has the title of Barbarian Bull among the many disciples of Qingxia sect, Niu Danzan. All disciples of the Qingxia sect know that Lu Yuxia is Niu Ganzan's sweetheart. This barbaric bull had fought with many people in the past because of Lu Yuxia's jealousy. I believe that if the man Niu who was on vacation at home knew that his sweetheart was going to become someone else's dual cultivation partner, he would be furious. Suchen was very much looking forward to it. Nyota village is 100 miles away from Shehi town. Suchen hurried all the way, drinking river water when he was thirsty, eating wild fruits and catching pheasants when he was hungry. Finally, 2 nights later, he arrived at the head of Nyota village. At this time, the starlight was dim and the path was vaguely discernible. Suchen licked his chapped lips, came to the simple archway at the head of the village, carved the 10 words Lu Yuxia will marry twice in 1 day on the pillar with a knife, and walked away. The feud with Yang Su is now just asking for interest. In the future, that guy needs to repay the principal with interest. As for the person who destroyed my spiritual roots, I, Suchen, will fight you to the death for the rest of my life. At dawn the next day, Suchen lay on an old tree, biting into a fragrant beggar's chicken, humming a tune, and enjoying a rare leisure time. Suddenly, there was a sword roar in the distance, and a black line shot up from the ground, flying rapidly in the direction of Kingxia sect. Suchen squinted his eyes, and could vaguely see a strong figure walking with a sword. Suchen raised a sneer on his lips, swallowed the last bite of chicken, jumped off the old tree, found a safe and hidden place, and gently opened the backpack he had never checked. There are more than 30 taels of silver in total, which is not much, but practitioners don't have much demand for these things. There are 45 pieces of spiritual stones, among which Suchen actually found 5 middle-grade spiritual stones. In the Kingxia sect, only disciples who have reached the Suanhui realm are eligible to receive 10 low-grade spiritual stones for cultivation every month. Disciples at the Kaiwa realm are not eligible to use spiritual stones for cultivation. As for mid-grade spiritual stones, even monks at the Jinhui realm would not have the luxury to use them for cultivation. Generally, only those who have reached the Danhui realm would use mid-grade spiritual stones as general consumables. A medium-grade spiritual stone is worth 100 low-grade spiritual stones. In other words, Suchen is wandering around for hundreds of miles carrying more than 500 low-grade spiritual stones these days. It scares me just thinking about it. Suchen secretly wiped his hands with cold sweat and continued to check. Qi gathering powder, well, this is what I originally prepared, but unfortunately there is only one pack. It is very effective for Qi martial realm monks to speed up their cultivation. Xiao Huan Dan, 2 bottles. This is a treasure. Suchen quickly put these 2 bottles of Xiao Huan Dan in his arms. For low-level monks, Xiao Huan Dan is a life-saving medicine. It can cure both internal and external injuries. Among the monks, this kind of elixir is consumed a lot big, although it is only a first-level elixir. A small bottle of spiritual dew. Suchen was overjoyed when he looked at this small bottle of spiritual dew. He did not expect that such a good treasure was hidden in the dead body in black. The spiritual dew belongs to the second-level high-grade elixir, and it does not exist in the form of pills, but in the form of liquid. It has the effect of increasing spiritual power for monks in Suanhui and even Jinhui realm. It is a very popular elixir among monks. Suchen opened it a little, and immediately a wave of the refreshing fragrance came, and he took a deep breath greedily. He suddenly felt relaxed all over the body, and even the dry meridians were a little ready to stir. He quickly plugged the bottle mouth tightly, and Suchen carefully hid the bottle of spiritual dew. Now is not the time to use this when drinking a bottle of spiritual dew, let alone a useless person. Even a monk in the Qi martial realm would explode and die immediately if he drank just 1 drop of spiritual dew. The amount of spiritual energy contained in the spiritual dew is too huge, and he cannot do it now. I touched it. Continuing to rummage, a 3-inch long dagger appeared in Suchen's hand. It was a wooden sword, dark red, with natural wood grains on it, which looked simple and natural. However, there were small carvings on the hilt. The formation and the grooves where the spiritual stones were placed told Suchen that this was a flying sword. The biggest difference between monks and mortals is not only that they have unpredictable divine power, but also the ability to go to heaven and into the sea. Flying swords are among the first spiritual weapons. Category, specifically for monks to fly. There are also various flying magic weapons such as gourds, riding brushes, sailing boats, etc. However, these kinds of magic weapons come at the cost of consuming spiritual energy. The spiritual energy in the body of ordinary monks cannot support it at all. In a short time, most of them will be driven by spiritual stones. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1107. Chapter 1107 The Fragmented Scroll Technique. 4 and 6 are reborn, 7 and 9 are reborn, and 10 levels of enlightenment are achieved. But now Suchen can't drive the flying sword even if he has the spirit stone. The power of the flying sword is spiritual stones, but the helmsman of the flying sword is the spiritual guidance of the monks, and Suchen doesn't have a trace of spiritual power in his body now. After putting away the flying sword, Suchen shook the bag and found that there was nothing left. The baggage is rolled up from the clothes of the man in black. Now that Suchen is in ragged clothes, it is time to wash and put on these clothes. Huh? Suchen, who was drying his clothes, exclaimed in surprise and stared at the clothes hanging among the branches. There was a black shadow as big as a palm among them. Are there any compartments inside? The presence of a compartment means that there is probably something important inside. Suchen quickly took off his clothes, carefully tore open a corner of the compartment, and took out the contents. When he opened it, he saw that it was an exercise. But he only read it briefly. After a while, Suchen put it down without interest. What was hidden so deeply was actually just a broken scroll technique that had become popular on the street. This technique has no name, and everyone calls it the residual scroll technique, because this technique there are only the first 3 levels, and no one has ever discovered the 4th level. And this technique is somehow available in almost every sect. It is extremely slow to practice this technique, and it is an incomplete technique. You can only practice it until you reach a certain level. The martial arts realm has come to an end, and the only advantage is that it has more spiritual power than people at the same realm. Is the man in black so smart? Treating such a crappy article as a treasure. Suchen thought with some annoyance. But when I thought about it again, I felt something was wrong. As long as I was a normal person, I would never do such a weird thing. There must be a monster when something goes wrong. Suchen read the remaining scroll of the exercises carefully twice. Still didn't find anything. It was exactly the same as what he had seen before in Kingxia section. There was no difference. I still don't believe it. There must be something fishy here. Suchen was lying in the grass, looking at the brocade cloth recording the exercises. Soon, Suchen jumped up. Is what is said here true? Through the direct sunlight, Suchen actually saw another layer of writing on the ordinary exercise. 1 or 3 build the foundation, 4 or 6 are reborn, 7 or 9 reshape the bones, and 10 levels of enlightenment. Is this talking about this exercise? Suchen was so excited that his lips trembled a little. 1 or 3 build the foundation, and 4 or 6 are reborn. In other words, the first 3 levels of this residual scroll technique are just foundation building. Only when you practice to the 4th level will you see a completely different transformation. 7 or 9 changes of bones, 10 levels of enlightenment. 10 levels of enlightenment, 10 levels of enlightenment. Suchen murmured these words. For thousands of years, there have been tens of thousands of monks on this earth. How many of them may have attained enlightenment? And every one of them is a legend, and no one knows whether it is true or false. This technique actually dares to talk about 10 levels of enlightenment. What a loud tone! Suchen calmed down a little and thought, I don't ask for enlightenment anymore. If I can be reborn and get back the middle grade spiritual root I lost, I will have a chance to take revenge. Suchen carefully checked the handwriting on the brocade cloth to make sure there was nothing missing. He memorized it word for word, and then burned the brocade cloth. It is strange to say that when the brocade cloth was burned by fire, it instantly turned into light spots and dissipated between the sky and the earth. Magic. Looking at the scene in front of him, Suchen believed a little more what was said in the brocade cloth. After packing his luggage, Suchen headed east, practicing the fragmented scroll technique whenever he had time. His understanding was not good at all. It's just that the spiritual root has now become the worst pseudo-spiritual root. Cultivating it no longer has the same sense of pleasure as before, and the growth of spiritual power is extremely slow. The next day, the residence of Guanxi the outer sect of the Qingxia sect, was decorated with lanterns and colorful ribbons, with happy words written on red silk, and was full of guests, making it extremely lively. As a monk, Yang Su was not as good as a mortal wearing groom's clothes, but his complacent expression was even more satisfying than being a groom. There were hundreds of outer sect disciples, at least most of them came here to congratulate her. Lu Yuxia looked delicate and cute, nestled next to Yang Su, even more gorgeous than usual, causing people around her to keep peeking at her. Just as everyone was singing Yang Su and Lu Yuxia's "The Jade is Made of Heaven," the Mandarin Duck Wins the Immortal, a majestic sword roar came from far and near, accompanied by a familiar roar. "Who dares to snatch my cow from a woman who dares to fight?" This roar made the roof beams tremble, everyone's hearts trembled, and even Yang Su froze with a smile on his face. This guy, didn't he take a year off? Why did he come suddenly? Before Yang Su could think of a countermeasure, as soon as the Niu Ganzin landed, he punched Yang Su directly in front of Yang Su's face. With the 9th level of cultivation, she couldn't even dodge. She was directly thrown away by the punch and crashed through 7 or 8 banquet tables before hitting the ground hard and immediately passed out. Lu Yuxia on the side was frightened and waited for her to turn around. When God came, she immediately screamed and ran towards her father. "Daddy, save me." Everyone knows that this bull is greedy for his beauty, but before that, 2 of the 3 women who were deceived by this bull died unexpectedly. How dare she, Lu Yuxia, pair up with this bull? Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1108. Chapter 1108, Cheating People to Death King Kong Gate. But she didn't run more than 3 or 2 steps when a big hand hugged her, a heavy breath sprayed on her face, and a big rough face came in front of her and said in a muffled voice, "Yuxia, how can you betray me?" Lu Yuxia rolled her eyes and fainted. A month later, Suchen came to Fuhu town, thousands of miles away from Qingxia sect, which belonged to the sphere of influence of another sect, Chongjian Pavilion. Chongjian Pavilion and Qingxia sect are both one of the several sects in the Crescent Kingdom. Different from Qingxia sect, there are several small sects under Chongjian Pavilion. They respect Chongjian Pavilion as the main sect and give many tributes to Chongjian Pavilion every year. Not far to the north of Fuhu town is the mountain gate of a small sect, the Vajra sect, which often recruits disciples nearby. Suchen was planning to join a sect, which was both safe and conducive to practice. After all, there were a lot of resources in the section. No matter how much or how little, it was always better than practicing on your own. Along the way, Suchen no longer had to worry about anyone recognizing him, so he had already changed his outfit, wearing a green dress and cloth boots, which was neat and tidy. However, while Suchen was eating and resting in a tavern in Fuhu town, and getting to know the local customs, he heard a commotion outside. Dang dang dang, the gong sounded. Everyone is polite, our Vajra sect will be recruiting disciples in Fuhu Ridge in 3 days. Anyone with spiritual roots can participate. If you can join our Vajra sect, you will be treated favorably, with 8 spiritual stones per month. Suchen heard the sound and went to see a young man banging a gong and shouting hard on the street, while bowing to everyone around him. This made Suchen a little strange. People from all over the world have always crowded into the section. How have I ever seen this before? The sect must also shout hard like this when recruiting disciples. Just when Suchen was puzzled, the diners at the table next to him snorted coldly. You still want to trick people into getting in? The last time we fought against the Jianhe sect, 100 disciples died. Other sects were not as miserable as the Vajra sect. Even if you beat me to death, I won't go. This is not recruiting people to practice, it is clearly recruiting people to die. The people around were also indignant. Obviously what the diner said was true. However, someone still said, but this Vajra gate never tells lies. It says that it is 8 spiritual stones per month, and there is no deduction. Compared with other for the sect, it is still very generous. Hearing this man speak, someone immediately pushed him back. If you think it's rich, go for it. Don't fool people here. The man hurriedly made a fist and said with a smile, brother, I just sighed, how could I really enter the palace of hell? Hearing everyone talking again, Suchen gradually figured out the situation here. It turns out that this small sect under the heavy sword pavilion does not allocate as many resources to its disciples as the Kingsia section. I think so, it is a small section after all, it is not as good as the big sects. But I heard from people around me that small sects like Jianhe sect only give their disciples 3 or 4 spiritual stones for a month, and no more than 5 at most. His disciples only had 1 or 2 yuan. Although Suchen had some wealth, he had to think about the future. In the past month, he had been walking around and restored his cultivation to the 2nd level of Kaiwu, but this was after taking the result of a pack of qi gathering powder. There is no other reason. His cultivation speed is too slow due to his pseudo-spiritual roots. In addition, the technique he practices is the residual scroll technique, which is famous for its slow cultivation speed. This cultivation speed is really as fast as a turtle. Suchen, who had made rapid progress in the past 7 years, couldn't stand this speed of cultivation anyway, so he had to take the qi gathering powder, so that he could reach the 2nd level of qi and wu in a month. Otherwise, if he really relied on him, the speed at which the pseudo-spiritual root absorbs spiritual energy cannot break through the 1st level of Kaiwu in a year. Now the only pack of qi gathering powder has been used, and the spiritual stone must reach the 3rd level of Kaiwu before it can be used, otherwise it will be easy to be affected by the spiritual energy. The backlash of the impure spiritual energy in the stone. But Suchen estimated that when he reached the 3rd level of qi martial arts, with the spiritual energy conversion efficiency of his pseudo-spiritual roots, he would probably have to consume 1 spiritual stone a day to reach the point where he could not use the spiritual stone for half a day. The effect of cultivation. In this way, a month is 30 yuan, and including the middle grade spiritual stones in his backpack, he has the equivalent of 540 low grade spiritual stones. What's more, the further you practice, the more spiritual stones you consume. The more stones there are, I am afraid that this small amount of spiritual stones cannot last even a year. Moreover, sects such as Kingsia sect and Changjian Pavilion will definitely not accept their own qualifications for pseudo-spiritual roots. Only the Diamond sect can, only small sects can try their luck. As for the death rate of Vajra sect disciples that has been criticized by everyone, Suchen plans to look at it at that time. If it doesn't work, he can still escape halfway. Now, although his previous strength is gone, but those martial arts skills and eyesight that he cultivated are still there. As long as his cultivation level rises, Suchen is confident that no one in the same realm can defeat him. Then, just wait for the recruitment in 3 days. Fuhu Ridge is located 30 miles northeast of Fuhu town. It is a gently undulating hill. It was named because there is a huge stone on the top of the mountain that looks like a crouching tiger. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1109. Chapter 1109. Beating someone? You have to lose money, you know? Weird skills. At this time, the sky was bright and there were 100 or 200 people gathered on Fuhu Ridge, which was really lively. Although the young man was scolded when he notified the Vajra sect to recruit disciples in Fuhu town that day, the Vajra sect was able to obtain 8 spiritual stones a month, and the effect was very significant. People die for money and birds die for food. In order to get 8 spiritual stones this month, many people with some cultivation qualifications rushed here to participate in the recruitment. Fuhu Ridge is not big, and 1 or 200 people almost occupy this small mountain ridge. Since Suchen arrived early, he found a shady place early to cross-legged and practice Ji while waiting for someone to come from the Vajra sect. However, where there are people, there are rivers and lakes. Suchen wanted to rest alone, but there were people who wanted to cause trouble. Hello. That boy, what about you? Get out of the way, uncle. 3 middle-aged strong men in short-sleeved clothes walked up to Suchen arrogantly. One of them saw that the thin young man was indifferent and kicked him directly. The uncle gives you face and asks you to get out of the way. It's shameless to give you face, but I have to take action. When people around saw this scene, they all turned away. Only a few people with 3 or 2 companions dared to talk loudly. Aren't these the 3 guards of the Gao family in Fohu town? Why are they here today to participate in the recruitment of the Vajra sect? Do not you know? Last month, these 3 people protected the young master of the Gao family, but they were beaten by a 3rd-level Kaiwa cultivator. These 3 people failed to protect him well and were dismissed by the Gao family. I think it was because I had no income, I was short of money, and I wanted to improve my strength, so I decided to choose a disciple of the Vajra section. Having been exposed, the other 2 of the 3 middle-aged strong men became angry. However, seeing that there were many people on the other side, they could only glare a few times. In any case, the only people talking about them were the 3 middle-aged strong men. As for the thin young man sitting cross-legged, in everyone's mind, he must have been beaten, and then swallowed his anger and moved to another place. Gao Shizhen also thought so. Although his kick was powerful and heavy, it was not necessary to die. If you think about it, with this kick, the boy only needs to lie in bed for half a year and a year before he can get out of bed. It's not the uncle, but I have a dark heart. Who told him to take advantage of the uncle's good place without being wise? With a plop, Gao Shizhen never expected that his foot would actually miss the mark. His strength was used up, but he could not get it back. His center of gravity was unstable and he immediately fell forward. Gao Shi and Gao Shi next to him was shocked. Before they could see what was going on, the 3rd brother, Gao Shizhen, actually kicked him down. Gao Shizhen and Gao Shizhen didn't see clearly, and Gao Shizhen was dizzy after falling. I didn't even see what was going on, let alone other people. Hit someone? Do you know that you have to pay for it? A faint voice came from behind the 3 of them. The 3 middle-aged strong men were stunned and looked back. Unexpectedly, at some point, this young man actually came behind the 3 of them. If it were normal, these 3 of them should also know that I shouldn't have offended anyone, but no less than 200 people were staring at this place. When Gao Shizhen fell, everyone shouted ouch, and they were so excited. Who doesn't like to watch the fun? There were even more people hiding in the crowd and making noises. Some people shouted, "Oh, the 3 great Vajras of the Gao family were beaten into dogs some time ago, why did they turn into bears again today? What a bear! Ha ha! I'm telling you, you 3, a little kid can trick you like this. It's very embarrassing for you. You should pack up and get out of here. Don't embarrass the King Kong sect. Ha 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 ha." The faces of the 11 and 3 senior students turned purple, veins popped out on their foreheads, and they looked around with gloomy eyes. They knew that today's scene couldn't just be like this. If they didn't beat the kid down, the 3 of them would never be able to raise their heads in front of others in the future. The 3 of them are not stupid. They know that everyone is afraid of chaos in the world, so they just watch the jokes of the 3 of them. But the situation must be restored. Gao Shi, the strongest among the 3, stopped Gao Shizhen from stepping forward and whispered. "This guy has weird skills, so let me do it." Gao Shizhen glared at Suchen fiercely. Although he stopped, he still said unwillingly, "Brother, don't kill me. Let me take a few breaths, too." Gao Shi nodded, with a cruel smile on his lips, and bullied the young man. Gao Shii was a third-level middle-level Kaiwu practitioner. He could use his spiritual power very smoothly with both punches and kicks to enhance his combat power. Knowing that the boy in front of him had some physical skills, so he used a set of fast punches with a very fast speed, and used the wind to rush towards the young man. The contempt that had been hanging on the corner of the boy's mouth was very disgusting, so Gao Shi, once he made the decision, he was going to cripple this kid and let him have a long memory so that he would know who should be provoked and who should not be provoked in the future. The strong wind of punches hit his face, and Su Chen's eyes lit up slightly. This man's boxing skills are still a bit good. It looks like, but it's just a look. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1110. Chapter 1110 The Power of Wandering Dragon Step. Su Chen snorted coldly, tipped his toes slightly, and a trace of spiritual power flowed through the soles of his feet, making Su Chen instantly pop up 1 meter away like a spiritual crane. And this action, in the eyes of Gao Shii who rushed towards him, was just a blur in front of his eyes. Screaming secretly, Gao Shii reluctantly held back his strength, took 2 staggering steps and finally stopped, avoiding bulleting Gao Shizen's footsteps. Su Chen folded his arms behind him and said calmly, 1 move is worth a spirit stone. The 2 of you have 2 moves in total. Remember, you owe me 2 spirit stones. What a crazy thing to say, Gao Shii roared violently, gathered all his spiritual power, turned his right hand into a claw, and used a fierce tiger claw move, going straight to Su Chen's throat bone. If this move was successful, Su Chen's throat bone would be destroyed directly. Crush. Gao Shii clearly had murderous intentions. A cold light flashed in Su Chen's eyes, he turned slightly on the soles of his feet, easily dodging this brutal blow, and then mobilized his whole body's spiritual power to concentrate on his right palm, facing Gao Shii's back. A pat on the back. Ah! Gao Shii screamed and fell to the ground, with a trace of blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. Seeing this scene, Su Chen shook his head secretly. His cultivation level was still too low. If he had the strength of the 3rd level of Kaiwu, this should, even if Gao Shii is not knocked unconscious, it can at least make him temporarily lose the ability to resist. Gao Shii stuck out his tongue and licked the blood at the corner of his mouth, with a violent look in his eyes, and glanced at Gao 12 and Gao Shi with 1 glance. The 2 men immediately understood each other and surrounded Su Chen with a ferocious smile. They couldn't fight alone, they were trying to bully the smaller ones. Tisk tisk, I don't know what kind of movement this young man has learned, but it's amazing. It's a pity. I think that young man's cultivation level is at least the 2nd level of Kaiwu. If he is surrounded by people 11 or 3 higher than the 3rd level of Kaiwu, I'm afraid he will be in trouble. The fact seems to be exactly what this person said. The tall 11 and 3 people surrounded Su Chen in a perfect glyph, leaving no gap. As the 3 of them became smaller and smaller, Su Chen's room for movement became smaller. Then the advantages of law will be compromised. Brother, how about we rescue that kid and use some coercion and inducement to get him to use his body skills? Someone next to him was jealous of Su Chen's body and martial arts skills, and secretly whispered to his companions. Don't worry. Well, on the Fohu Rock, the people from the Vajra sect are here. Let's see how it ends first. If that kid hadn't entered the Vajra gate, we would have robbed him halfway. The man raised his eyes and saw, sure enough, 2 monks in black clothes were standing on top of the boulder, looking at the scene with great interest. Senior brother, do you think the boy or the 3 will win? On top of the boulder, a handsome young man smiled slightly and asked to the side. The person in question had a beard under his chin and was a little older. Hearing this, he stroked his beard and smiled and said, winning or losing, that young man's skills are pretty good. As long as your qualifications are not too bad, you will have no problem entering my Vajra section. Junior brother, be careful later, don't let those three idiots destroy a good young talent of our Vajra sect. But the handsome young man was reluctant and said with a smile, brother, you haven't answered my question yet. Will that young man win or lose? The man shook his head, looked at the weak young man in the field, and muttered, I should be able to withstand a few moves, but the difference in strength is too big, so I will lose in the end. Oh? The young junior brother raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, then I'll bet that boy will win. Senior brother, do you have anything to bet on? The senior brother glanced at him. He knew that this junior brother always wanted to bet on anything he saw. He ignored him and paid attention to whether the young man in the scene could be one level higher than him in the three cultivation realms. How many moves can be sustained in the hands of such a person? Watch carefully, don't let this kid slip away, Gao Shii shouted as he and his two brothers approached Suchen step by step. Gao Shizhen's eyes widened with excitement and cruelty. Brother, don't worry. The three of us will miss if we join forces, so we might as well find a piece of mud and hit him to death. Gao 12, however, remained silent. Instead, he concentrated on staring at the feet of the boy in the center of the field. He believed that this boy had a unique trick. As long as he broke the boy's body skills, he could squeeze them into balls and flatten them. It's not because of these three brothers. Suchen's eyes also showed excitement at this moment. Since his cultivation was abolished, he has been holding back a breath of anger in his heart and has no way to vent it. Now that these three people have come to the door, he just needs to test himself. What is the level of his current strength, and he can give it a good vent. Fight. As long as it is a fight. No matter how many opponents there are, he has never been afraid. It was like this before, and it is still like this now. Do you think that by surrounding me, I can be captured? Suchen had a sneer on his lips. Although his cultivation level is not high enough, even if he uses the strength of the second level of Kaiwu to perform this wandering dragon step, it is not something that these three little shrimps of the third level of Kaiwu can resist. Turning his right foot lightly, Suchen stared at a weak point between Gao Shizhen and Gao 12, and jumped forward. Gao 12, who had been staring at Suchen's feet, immediately brightened his eyes. Hey, I've been staring at your actions for a long time. Woolen cloth. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1111. Chapter 1111. If you hit someone, you have to pay for it. Gao 12, who was already prepared, immediately crossed over to Gao Shizhen's side and punched out at the same time, trying to block Suchen's path. Unexpectedly, although Suchen was in mid-air, he quickly tapped his feet against the void a few times, and his forward body stopped unexpectedly. Before landing, his left foot touched the ground and immediately changed direction, drifting towards the large gap exposed on the right side of Gao 12. What? Gao 12 punched the air, his eyes widened, and his face was in disbelief. He can actually borrow power in mid-air. How can this be? Second brother, get out of the way, Gao Shizhen suddenly shouted behind Gao 12. It turned out that when Suchen made a gesture to pounce, not only Gao 12 was aware of it, but Gao Shizhen, although a little slower, also pounced at the same time. But when he pounced, Gao 12 happened to be standing in front of him. Unfortunately, Gao 12 was not as good as Suchen. When Gao Shizhen shouted, it was already too late. The two of them collided suddenly and fell into a ball. On the side was originally Gao Shii, who was waiting for the formation, stared at the scene in stunned silence, with the corner of his mouth twitching. The formation that was just made was just so easily shaken by that kid and disappeared. Idiot, Gao Shishi yelled at the two people on the ground. The people around him also laughed in cooperation. On top of the boulder, the young junior brother couldn't help but praise it's interesting. The senior brother also nodded and said, Well, he is indeed somewhat smart. Gao Shi's face turned red and his eyes were red. He pulled up the two embarrassed brothers and glared at the young man who was standing aside to relax, but he did not act rashly. Suchen was stunned for a moment. Has he lost his fighting spirit? Then okay, it's time to collect the money. He won't do anything that's not beneficial, let alone an idiot like this. Suchen adjusted his spiritual power and rushed towards the strongest Gao Shi. Gao Shi's eyes shone slightly, and sure enough, this kid couldn't hold back and attacked himself. After these 3 or 2 moves, Gao Shi was very clear about the opponent's advantages and his own weaknesses, so he forcibly suppressed his inner rage this time. Instead of rushing to chase that kid, he instead responded to all changes by remaining unchanged, taking advantage of his stronger cultivation base than the opponent, and wearing down the opponent. Unfortunately, this time he made the wrong calculation. There is such a big difference in the speed of Yi and Suchen's movements. I am afraid that instead of being able to cope with all changes, he will become a wooden stake and be beaten. Boom! Boom! Before Gao Shi could see what was going on, he was punched twice in the face. He staggered 2 steps. As soon as he stood firm, he was punched twice again, still in the original place. Ah! Gao Shi yelled frantically, little beast, what kind of hero can you be if you have the ability to fight head-on and just go around and around to figure things out? Puff! This 11th grader is so shameless, and he behaves badly when he can't win, the onlookers sneered. Boom! Boom! Suchen responded to Gao Shi's roar with his fists. Seeing that his eldest brother was beaten to the point of being unable to fight back, Gao 12 and Gao Shizhen roared and rushed towards Suchen. However, the 3 people who formed the initial formation were all there was nothing he could do about Suchen. With this unorganized and chaotic attack, could he touch the corner of Suchen's clothes? Snort. If it weren't for my low cultivation level and limited lethality, Gao Shi would have been lying down long ago. How could he still stand and scream like this? Suchen's figure was like the wind, he shuttled between the 3 of them with ease, and every time he saw the opportunity to hit the same spot on Gao Shi's face. Gao Shi covered Lao Gao's swollen face and cried out, no fight, no fight. Brother, please forgive me, I'm in high school. Impressed? Suchen hummed in his mind, you have to stop after you have convinced me, I haven't vented my anger enough yet. Bang bang bang. There was a continuous sound of punches and blows, first high 11, then high 12, and high 13. It wasn't until Suchen's hand became soft from the beating that he stopped. The 3 brothers of the Gao family were already lying on the ground unconscious. I said it from the beginning, if you hit someone, you have to pay for it. You have been beating me for so long for no reason, and I will not stop until you pay 10 or 8 spiritual stones, Suchen said confidently to the 3 unconscious people. In fact, he was telling the people around him. He quickly searched the 3 people very skillfully and found 6 low-grade spiritual stones. Suchen sighed and cursed, poor ghost. The people around him saw all this in front of their eyes, but felt a little cold in their hearts. Even though this boy was so thin, he was not a good person. The people who coveted him at the beginning were a little hesitant at this moment. With the strength of 3 or 2, is he his opponent? Don't steal the chicken but lose the rice. This kid can do things like robbing people and property in public. The farce has come to an end, and the Vajra gate on the boulder is here. The person had already been discovered by everyone. The handsome junior brother in black clothes was the first to raise his hands and said, everyone, the Vajra sect is recruiting outer disciples this time. I, Jing Sheng, and my senior brother Chen Ben are in charge. After saying this, Jing Sheng whispered proudly to the senior brother beside him, senior brother, I won the bet just now, junior brother, hee hee.